December 19, 1944, Verdun, France. The room smells of cold stone, damp wool, and stale coffee. Cigarette smoke curls toward a ceiling that hasn't seen sunlight in centuries. Outside, snow falls in sheets across the French countryside, the same snow that is, at this very moment, burying American corpses in the Ardennes forest. General Dwight D. Eisenhower sits at the head of a long wooden table, his face drawn, his eyes bloodshot. Around him are gathered the most powerful Allied commanders in Europe: Omar Bradley, Jacob Devers, British Air Marshal Arthur Tedder. The maps spread before them tell a story of catastrophe. 3 days ago, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Wachtum am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine, the largest German offensive since 1940. Over 400,000 German troops, backed by 1,400 tanks, have smashed through the thinly held American lines in Belgium and Luxembourg. The bulge in the Allied front is growing by the hour. American units are being surrounded, annihilated, or simply ceasing to exist. And at the center of this nightmare, one word keeps being repeated: Bastogne. The crossroads town of Bastogne is the linchpin. 7 major roads converge there. Whoever holds Bastogne controls the flow of German armor toward the Meuse River, and beyond that, the vital Allied supply port of Antwerp. Right now, the 101st Airborne Division is being encircled there, running out of ammunition, running out of time. Eisenhower looks around the table. The mood is grim. Defeatist murmurs have already begun. Some are suggesting a general withdrawal to regroup. Then the door opens. General George S. Patton walks in. He is 59 years old. He wears his famous ivory-handled pistols on his hips. His uniform is immaculate, his boots polished to a mirror shine despite the mud and snow outside. He takes his seat at the table and for a moment says nothing. He simply looks at the map. When he speaks, his voice cuts through the silence like a blade. "Hell," Patton says, "let's have the guts to let the sons of bitches go all the way to Paris. Then we'll really cut 'em up and chew 'em up." The room goes quiet. Bradley shifts uncomfortably. Devers stares. Eisenhower leans forward. "George, when can you attack?" Patton doesn't hesitate. The morning of December 21st, with 3 divisions. Now the silence becomes something else, something closer to disbelief. What Patton is proposing is, by every measure of military logic, impossible. His Third Army is currently facing east, engaged in an offensive toward the Saar region of Germany. To attack the southern flank of the Bulge, he would have to disengage his forces from active combat, wheel them 90 degrees north, move over 100,000 men across icy roads through a blizzard, and launch a coordinated assault, all within 48 hours. Such a maneuver would normally require 2 weeks of planning minimum. Bradley speaks first. "George, don't be reckless. You can't attack with 3 divisions in less than 2 days." Patton turns to look at him. His blue eyes are cold, absolutely certain. "I've already given the orders. This is the moment. This is the man, and what happens next will become the most legendary maneuver in the history of modern warfare." But to understand how George S. Patton arrived at this table, how he became the one general that Adolf Hitler genuinely feared, we must go back to the deserts of North Africa, back to the beaches of Sicily, back to the greatest deception of the war. This is the story of a man who didn't just fight wars. He made his enemies believe they had already lost. Section 2, The Resurrection in Africa. March 1943, Tunisia, North Africa. The American army is in crisis. 2 months earlier, at a place called Kasserine Pass, German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps had torn through American lines like tissue paper. Inexperienced, poorly led, and psychologically shattered, U.S. forces had retreated in chaos. The defeat was so total that German intelligence reports began openly mocking American soldiers as soft, undisciplined, and incapable of real combat. Rommel himself writes in his diary, "The American soldier has no stomach for a fight." Eisenhower knows something must change, and fast. He needs a commander who can transform defeat into defiance. He needs someone brutal, brilliant, and absolutely fearless. He needs George S. Patton. When Patton arrives at II Corps headquarters, he finds exactly what he expects: slack discipline, dirty uniforms, officers dining on fine food while their men eat cold rations. The rot goes deep. His solution is simple: absolute, terrifying authority. Within hours, Patton institutes a dress code so strict that soldiers are fined $25 for not wearing neckties in combat zones. Helmets become mandatory, even in latrines. Officers who fail to meet standards are relieved on the spot, their careers destroyed in an instant. The men hate him at first. They call him names behind his back. They mock his polished boots and his pearl-handled pistols. But Patton doesn't care about being loved. He cares about one thing: winning. "I don't want to get any messages saying, 'I am holding my position,'" he tells his commanders. "We are not holding a goddamned thing. Let the Germans do that. We are advancing constantly." Within weeks, the transformation is visible. Units that had broken at Kasserine are now attacking with ferocity. And on March 23, 1943, at El Getter, they get their chance to prove it. The 10th Panzer Division, elite German armor, launches a counterattack against American positions. This time, the Americans do not run. They fight, they hold, and then, under Patton's orders, they counterattack. By the end of the battle, the 10th Panzer has lost over 30 tanks and pulled back in disorder. For the first time, German commanders begin to take notice of Patton's name. And they begin to worry. Section 3, Speed Kills. July 1943, Sicily. The invasion of Sicily is supposed to be a joint Allied effort, American forces under Patton advancing on the left flank, British forces under Montgomery on the right. The plan is cautious, methodical. Montgomery's 8th Army will take the glory, capturing the prize of Messina on the island's northeastern tip. Patton has other ideas. From the moment his 7th Army lands, Patton pushes his men forward at a pace that staggers his superiors, while Montgomery gets bogged down fighting through mountainous terrain against stubborn German defenders. Patton's forces race across the western half of the island, capturing city after city in rapid succession. The roads are terrible, the heat is brutal, mules collapse under the weight of supplies, but Patton refuses to slow down. "We'll attack and attack until we are exhausted," he tells his staff, "and then we will attack again." His philosophy is built on one simple premise: speed kills, not just enemy soldiers but enemy plans. If you move faster than your opponent can react, you prevent him from ever establishing a coherent defense. You keep him off balance, confused, reeling. The Germans in Sicily experience this firsthand. German General Hans-Valentin Hube, commanding the defense of the island, reports to Berlin that he cannot predict where Patton will strike next. By the time he moves reserves to block one advance, Patton has already bypassed the position entirely. On August 17, 1943, American forces enter Messina, hours before the British arrive. Montgomery is furious, but the message is clear: Patton is not content to play a supporting role. He fights to win, and he fights faster than anyone else. There is, however, a cost to this ruthlessness. Section 4, The Slap Heard Round the World. August 1943, Field Hospital, Sicily. It happens in a tent filled with wounded soldiers. Patton, touring the hospital, encounters a young private sitting on a cot. The man has no visible wounds, no bandages, no blood. When Patton asks why he's there, the soldier begins to weep. "It's my nerves," he says. "I can't take the shelling anymore." What happens next will nearly end Patton's career. Patton explodes. He calls the man a coward. He slaps him across the face with his gloves. He threatens to shoot him. Orderlies have to intervene before Patton storms out. The incident and a second, similar episode a week later becomes a scandal. War correspondents, initially suppressing the story, eventually release it. Back home, the American public is outraged. Calls come for Patton's dismissal, even his court-martial. Eisenhower, however, makes a different calculation. Patton is too valuable to lose. His tactical genius is irreplaceable. Instead of firing him, Eisenhower removes him from command temporarily, forces him to apologize publicly to his troops, and puts him on ice. For nearly a year, Patton sits idle, watching the war continue without him. But even in disgrace, his reputation haunts the Germans. And Eisenhower is about to use that reputation as a weapon. Section 5, The Ghost Army. Spring 1944, England. Operation Overlord is coming. The Allied invasion of France will be the largest amphibious assault in history, but its success depends on one thing above all else: deception. The Germans know an invasion is coming. They do not know where. Allied intelligence launches Operation Fortitude, a massive disinformation campaign designed to convince Hitler that the main invasion will come at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. Fake radio transmissions, phony documents, inflatable tanks, and entire divisions that exist only on paper are created to sell the lie. And at the center of this phantom army, they place one man, George S. Patton. German intelligence is obsessed with Patton. They track his movements with the intensity of men hunting a wolf. They know he is in England. They know he is the Allies' most aggressive commander. Therefore, they conclude he must be leading the main invasion. Patton plays his role to perfection. He appears at public events. He gives speeches. He inspects fake divisions. He does everything to make the Germans believe that the 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG, is real, that it is preparing for the decisive blow at Calais. Hitler takes the bait. Even after D-Day begins on June 6, 1944, even as Allied forces storm the beaches of Normandy, Hitler refuses to release his armored reserves from Calais. He is convinced Normandy is a feint. The real invasion, led by Patton, is still coming. He holds those reserves for weeks. By the time he realizes the truth, it is too late. Patton has just won a battle without firing a single shot. Section 6, the UNLEASHING. August 1, 1944, Normandy, France. The waiting is over. Patton officially takes command of the 3rd United States Army, and he is given one mission: break out of the Normandy beachhead and destroy the German forces in France. He does not need to be told twice. Within days of becoming operational, the Third Army begins to move with a speed that astonishes friend and foe alike. Patton's armored divisions pour through a gap at Avranches and fan out across the French countryside, racing not in one direction, but in 3 simultaneously. To the east toward Paris, to the south toward the Loire, to the west into Brittany. German commanders are paralyzed. Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge, commanding German forces in France, sends desperate reports to Berlin. The American breakthrough at Avranches has created a crisis we cannot contain. Patton's armor is moving too fast to track. This is Patton's genius in its purest form. He understands that in mobile warfare, tempo is everything. A fast decision, even if imperfect, is better than a slow decision that is optimal. By the time the enemy has analyzed your last move, you should already be executing your next. His staff officers work around the clock, coordinating logistics on the fly. Tank columns advance so quickly that supply lines struggle to keep up, but Patton doesn't care. He will worry about fuel and ammunition later. Right now, the enemy is reeling, and he intends to keep punching. In 1 month, August 1944, the Third Army advances farther and faster than any army in military history. They capture over 100,000 German prisoners. They liberate city after city. They shatter the German front so completely that the Wehrmacht cannot rebuild it. The race across France becomes legend. But every race eventually runs out of fuel. Section 7, the fuel crisis. September 1944, the Moselle River. The Third Army grinds to a halt. It is not the Germans who stop Patton, it is gasoline. His tanks have outrun their supply lines. The Red Ball Express, the convoy system feeding the Allied advance, cannot deliver fuel fast enough to keep pace with Patton's consumption. Each of his armored divisions burns 350,000 gallons per day. There is simply not enough. Patton is livid. He screams at logistics officers. He threatens to shoot quartermaster sergeants. He begs, cajoles, and manipulates headquarters for every drop of fuel he can get. My men can eat their belts, he rages, but my tanks have got to have gas. The crisis reveals a fundamental tension in Allied strategy. Eisenhower is trying to advance on a broad front, distributing resources across multiple armies. Patton believes this is insane. He wants every gallon of fuel concentrated on his front so he can smash through the German lines before they can rebuild. Give me 400,000 gallons of gasoline, he tells Bradley, and I'll put you inside Germany in 2 days. But Eisenhower says no, resources must be shared. The British under Montgomery also need fuel. The advance will continue, but cautiously. Patton seethes. For weeks, the Third Army sits along the Moselle, unable to attack, watching the Germans rebuild their defenses. The window of opportunity, the chance to end the war in 1944, slips away. And then, in December, Hitler makes his move. Section 8, the Devil's Gamble. December 16, 1944, the Ardennes Forest. At 5:30 a.m., the silence of the frozen forest is shattered by the roar of 1,600 German artillery pieces opening fire simultaneously. Operation Wacht am Rhein has begun. Hitler's plan is audacious, desperate, and brilliant. By massing his remaining armored reserves in secret and attacking through the supposedly impassable Ardennes, he hopes to split the Allied armies, seize the vital port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace in the West. It is the same strategy that worked against France in 1940. Hitler believes it can work again. And for a few terrifying days, it seems like he might be right. The American VII Corps, holding the Ardennes with just 4 divisions spread across an 80-mile front, is overwhelmed. German armor punches through gaps, encircles American units, and drives deep into Belgium. Communication breaks down, panic spreads. At Allied headquarters, confusion reigns. No one is sure where the Germans are or how deep the penetration goes. But one man is not confused. George S. Patton has been watching the German buildup for weeks. His intelligence staff has noted the unusual radio traffic, the movement of trains, the disappearance of known German units from other sectors. He knows something big is coming. When it hits, he is ready. Before Eisenhower even calls the emergency meeting at Verdun, Patton has already ordered his staff to begin planning 3 separate counterattack scenarios. By the time he walks into that room and promises to attack with 3 divisions in 48 hours, the orders are already being transmitted. This is what separates Patton from every other commander. He is not reacting to the crisis. He is already 3 steps ahead of it. Section 9. The Impossible Turn. December 1921, 1944, from the Saar to the Ardennes. The maneuver Patton is about to execute has never been attempted in military history. His Third Army is currently engaged along a 100-mile front, facing east toward Germany. To attack the German Bulge, he must disengage those forces, in contact with the enemy, wheel them 90 degrees north, march them 75 to 150 miles through a blizzard, and launch a coordinated assault against one of the largest concentrations of German armor in the entire war. The weather is atrocious, temperatures hover near zero, roads are choked with ice and abandoned vehicles, German aircraft still prowl the skies. And Patton is asking his men to do it all in 2 days. His staff officers work through the night, coordinating movement orders for over 100,000 men. Supply officers scramble to redirect fuel, ammunition, and food to new routes. Engineers prepare to clear roads and repair bridges. Signal units string new communication lines across frozen terrain. At every level of command, men are being asked to do the impossible. And somehow they do it. The 4th Armored Division, spearheading the attack, begins moving north on December 19th. By December 21st, they are in position to attack toward Bastogne. German commanders monitoring the situation cannot believe what they are seeing. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, overall commander of the offensive, receives intelligence reports indicating that Patton's forces are moving north. He dismisses them as impossible. An army cannot wheel an attack in winter conditions in less than a week, he tells his staff. This is Allied propaganda. He is wrong. On December 22nd, the Third Army attacks. Section 10. The Road to Bastogne. December 22-26, 1944. The relief of Bastogne. Inside Bastogne, the 101st Airborne Division is surrounded, outgunned, and running out of everything. When a German delegation approaches under a white flag and delivers an ultimatum, surrender or face annihilation, the American commander, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, gives a one-word reply that will echo through history. Nuts! But bravery alone cannot hold the town. The men inside need relief, and they need it fast. Patton's 4th Armored Division drives north through German-held territory, fighting for every mile. The resistance is fierce. German forces, aware of the threat, throw everything they have at the relief column: tanks, infantry, artillery. The advance is measured in yards, paid for in blood. But Patton will not let them stop. He is on the radio constantly, pushing, demanding, threatening. Drive like hell, he tells his division commanders. Don't stop for anything. On Christmas Day, the weather finally clears. Allied aircraft flood the skis, pounding German positions, dropping supplies to the trapped garrison at Bastogne. And on December 26th, at 4:50 p.m., tanks of Combat Command R, 4th Armored Division, break through the German lines and link up with the defenders of Bastogne. The siege is broken. The German offensive, already faltering, begins its final collapse. Within weeks, the Bulge is eliminated, and the Wehrmacht's last strategic reserve is destroyed. Hitler's final gamble has failed, and George S. Patton has executed the most audacious maneuver of the war. Section 11, The Numbers. The historical verdict. Let the numbers speak. Between December 19 and December 26, 1944, a span of just 7 days, the 3rd United States Army disengaged from active combat along a 100-mile front, executed a 90-degree turn in the middle of a blizzard, moved 133,178 men over distances of 75 to 150 miles, transported 62,628 vehicles and 1,500 tanks, attacked one of the most powerful concentrations of German armor in the entire war, and broke through to relieve the surrounded garrison at Bastogne. No army in history had ever executed such a maneuver under such conditions in such a short time. When the war ends, German generals will be interviewed extensively about their experiences. Almost universally, when asked which Allied commander they feared most, they will give the same answer: Patton. General Gunther Blumentritt, a senior Wehrmacht officer, will later write, "We regarded General Patton extremely highly as the most aggressive panzer general of the Allies. His operations impressed us enormously, probably because he came closest to our own concept of the classical military leader." Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the man who dismissed Patton's maneuver as impossible, will admit after the war, "Patton was your best." Even Hitler himself, according to captured German documents, specifically ordered his commanders to track Patton's movements above all other Allied generals. The Führer considered Patton the single greatest threat to German operations in the West. How did he do it? How did one man, commanding one army, instill such fear in an enemy that had conquered most of Europe? The answer lies not just in tactics or technology. It lies in will. Section 12, The Philosophy of Fury. Patton understood something that many commanders never grasp. War is not won by careful men, it is won by audacious ones. A good plan violently executed now, Patton said, is better than a perfect plan executed next week. He believed in the primacy of the offense, in the moral destruction of the enemy through relentless pressure. He believed that hesitation was death, that caution was surrender by another name. His men knew this, they felt it, and they fought with a fury that their enemies could not match. The German army was a formidable opponent, professional, experienced, disciplined, but they were trained to fight according to doctrine, to respond to predictable scenarios. Patton gave them nothing predictable. He attacked when he should have defended. He advanced when he should have consolidated. He took risks that no textbook commander would countenance. And because his enemies could not predict him, they could not stop him. Section 13, The Legacy. May 1945, Victory in Europe. When the war ends, George S. Patton's Third Army has liberated or captured over 81,000 square miles of territory, taken 1,280,688 prisoners, killed or wounded an estimated 500,000 enemy soldiers, crossed 24 major rivers, advanced farther and faster than any army in American history. But perhaps the greatest testament to Patton's impact comes not from Allied records, but from the words of his enemies. After the war, interrogators asked German General Fritz Bayerlein, commander of the elite Panzer Lehr division, a simple question: which Allied general did you consider the most dangerous? Bayerlein did not hesitate. Patton, he said, he was the only one who gave us real worries. Rommel admitted it too. Patton was the American Rommel. And that perhaps is the highest compliment the German military could pay. Section 14, The Final Word. Let us return to where we began. It is December 19, 1944, the Verdun meeting. Eisenhower has just asked Patton when he can attack. The other commanders have expressed doubt, skepticism, disbelief. And Patton has given his answer: I've already given the orders. In that moment, everything Patton has ever been crystallizes into perfect clarity: the discipline of North Africa, the speed of Sicily, the deception before D-Day, the race across France. He is not promising something impossible. He is promising something he has already made possible, because he planned for it before anyone else even saw the crisis coming. That is the essence of George S. Patton. Not recklessness, preparation disguised as recklessness. Not luck, calculation disguised as audacity. Not arrogance, absolute, unshakable certainty born of obsessive study and iron will. Hitler feared Patton because Patton fought the way the Germans wished they could fight, with speed, aggression, and an utter refusal to accept limitations. The Germans had a word for the kind of panic that Patton induced in his enemies, Panzerschreck, tank terror. But what Patton created was something deeper than terror. It was despair. The despair of knowing that no matter how well you planned, no matter how carefully you prepared, there was a man out there who was always thinking faster, moving faster, hitting harder. George S. Patton did not just defeat the German army. He broke something inside them. He made them believe, in the darkest hours of the war, that they could not win. And in war, that belief becomes reality. Outro. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. History remembers Patton as a controversial figure, profane, brutal, politically disastrous, but it also remembers him as one of the greatest combat commanders who ever lived. He died in December 1945, less than a year after the war ended, from injuries sustained in a car accident. He never got the death in battle he always said he wanted. But his legacy endures. Not just in the medals and monuments, but in the doctrine of modern armored warfare, in the belief that audacity, properly applied, can overcome any odds, in the knowledge that sometimes, just sometimes, the impossible is merely what has not yet been attempted. The object of war is not to die for your country, Patton said, it's to make the other bastard die for his. The Germans learned that lesson well.